Thanks for that song. Isn't it great that we can lay all our burdens on Christ and He'll carry it? Well, like Jason said, I'm Nathan Tolbert. I want to thank you guys for letting me come and speak to you today. I don't know most of you, so it's kind of a privilege that you would let me come as a relative stranger and come share what God's put on my heart to speak with you. So I appreciate that. I know for those of you that don't know me, there's kind of an introduction in the bulletin, but just a little bit of background. I did grow up here. Steve and Kathy Tolbert, my parents. Gave my life to Christ at a young age. We had a home where we were always talking about the Lord, and it seemed pretty natural to say, yeah, I want to follow Jesus. So that's been the most important thing in my life ever since then. Later, I married Sarah Harris. She's now Sarah Tolbert from Arkansas. She told me, we sang All Fly Away, and we said yonder in our singing, so she feels right at home here. We spent a couple years overseas in China doing business as missions, and that was a great opportunity. If you want to hear more about it, grab me afterwards. I'd love to talk about it. Then we came back to Champaign. We've been part of a church called Stratford Park Bible Chapel. It's a little bigger than this, but not a big church. I'm an elder there and help with leading music, teaching adult Sunday school, all sorts of things like that. Occasionally preaching, not super often. But that's kind of who I am. So like I said, I appreciate that you would have me come and share with you. I'm going to speak today, this morning, about the book of Proverbs and what the book of Proverbs says about what we say, the words of our mouth, our tongues. And partially this is not going to be too much of a surprise to most people because we know naturally that what we say has power, our words have weight behind them. We remember things that are said. There's some famous examples. I think we have some slides over here, some famous speeches, and we remember these because words have power. Now, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Who said that? Yeah, we all know it because those words changed the world. We got a couple of more examples here. 7 years ago. I don't need to read the rest. Who said that? Yeah, we all know it. I'm going to skip the next one because it's kind of long. So let's skip that one. Even shorter things. You know, who said this? John Lennon, the Beatles. We all remember it. It stuck with society. You know, this is something that changed the world. Or how about this next one? This wasn't quite as serious, but we all remember it. Sometimes our words, though, aren't, you know, they still may have weight to them, but they're not always as useful. We have this speech here. I believe in an America, or millions of Americans believe in an America. That's the America that millions of Americans believe in. That's the America I love. Hopefully my message to you makes more sense than that. But, you know, that was Mitt Romney, by the way. Anyway, we know naturally that the words we say have a lot of power and a lot of weight, and that God cares greatly about what we say. But my job this morning isn't just to tell you what I think about that. It's to say, what does the Bible say? What does Scripture say about our words? So we're going to look at Proverbs this morning and say, what did Solomon in Proverbs say about our speech? Well, if you spend any time in Proverbs reading through it, you know that it bounces around a lot. You know, there's a proverb about this and a proverb about that. The whole verse is kind of scattered with a lot of different thoughts. And so instead of speaking one specific verse that we're going to focus on, I'm going to jump around a lot. And so hopefully we got a bunch of slides up here, and I talked to Jeff ahead of time, so hopefully we'll be able to keep up with a lot of these passages as we go. Well, what I did in preparing was, I wanted to know, since there's not just one single verse, what does the whole book of Proverbs say about our speech? And so to prepare for this, I sat down and I skimmed through the whole book and just wrote down on a piece of paper every time there was a proverb about what we say, about our words. And pretty quickly, I filled up 2 or 3 pages and just hammered. I mean, it's just note after note, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of proverbs throughout the book. And so we can't go through each of them, but as I was reading through, there's a number of themes, a number of repeated ideas that come up over and over again in Proverbs. And that's what I want to talk about today, kind of these themes that have come up. But kind of diving into it, there's a number of proverbs, some examples that talk about specific sinful or unwise habits of our mouths. Things like gossip, lying, boasting, tearing people down. Proverbs 6:16-19. It talks about 7 things the Lord hates. And we'll see in there that 3 of those 7 things are things that we say. So let's read this. There's 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to the Lord. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict. That's, talking and gossip. A person who stirs up conflict in the community. Now I read that one because, it's mentioning 7 things God hates, and almost half of them are things that we say. This is clearly serious stuff. Another passage, Proverbs 26:28, it says, a lying tongue hates those it hurts. A flattering mouth works ruin. And those are just a couple examples, but really, if you open up Proverbs and just put your finger down, probably any page you look at is going to have a proverb where Solomon is talking about the power of our words. Or a page that didn't condemn things like lying or gossip or boasting. But not just condemning things, there's also proverbs that talk about good use of our tongue. Things like, the tongue of a righteous is choice silver, the lips of the righteous nourish many. Or a person finds joy in giving an apt reply, how good is a timely word. So there's a lot of these, do this and don't do this. But beyond that, beyond just these rules, there's something bigger here. There's principles that are underneath all of that. And that's what I want to spend more time talking about this morning. I don't want to just have a list of, here's good things you can do with your mouth, here's bad things. Don't lie, got it, let's go on. Don't gossip, everybody, that's not useful. We're not really interested this morning in a legalistic approach to it. Because a legalistic approach doesn't change us. As an example of that, it's like with small children. We have a rule in our house that we don't say hate. It's because we don't want, our kids saying, I hate you, or I hate these, or things like that. But my 4-year-old Rachel back there has really internalized this rule. So anytime, if we're reading from something, anytime the word hate comes up, she says, Daddy, we don't say hate. Which is good, but she's focused on the rule of that, as opposed to the deeper meaning, which is, we don't hate the good things God's given us. So we want to do the same thing with Proverbs here. We don't want to focus on the legalistic, just the list of rules. Instead, we want to talk about the principles. What's really important? What does Solomon and what does God really want to tell us? So as I'm talking about, I read through these Proverbs. There were a few main things that stuck out to me, a few key principles. The first of them is what I started with this morning. It's this idea that our words have power, either for good or for evil. They have an impact on the world around us. I mentioned those speeches, and they stick with us because these people's words and our words really do make a difference in the world. And in Proverbs, we're reminded of that. I'll talk more about that in a bit. The second principle that I'm going to talk about is kind of an extension of that, but it's not just that our words have power in the world around us, but that they change our own lives. The words I speak change who I am. And not only Proverbs talks about this, but in James talks about this as well. We'll get to that in a few minutes. The third point that I'm going to talk about later is kind of the flip side of those. Not just that our words change things, but our words reflect our own hearts. That our words are now pouring who we really are. So I'm going to break each of those down in turn. First is this idea that our words have power. This is all through the book of Proverbs. We're constantly reminded of the weight and the power that our words have. What famous saying isn't in Proverbs? The sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Solomon says is the exact opposite. He says things like this. With their mouths, the godless destroy their neighbors. Or the words of the reckless pierce like swords. The tongue of the wise brings healing. The lips of fools bring strife, and their mouths invite beating. There's lots of words. Pierce like a sword. This is a weapon that kills people. He's not just talking about, okay, it's not very nice. The way Solomon is describing this is a weapon of death. He's saying this is powerful, has the power to bring destruction and pain in the world around us. For an example, lying and gossip are things that are mentioned repeatedly in Proverbs. Now, my focus here isn't on lying and gossip itself. We just use them as an illustration of how our words can be destructive. Our God's a God of truth, and He knows how destructive lies can be. Proverbs 25:18, I don't know if it's up there or not. No, we'll see. It says, like a club or a sharp arrow is one who gives false testimony against the neighbor. A club or a sharp arrow. If we're using our words to tear other people down, that's a weapon that can cause destruction and kill. It's a weapon of war. You see when you're watching sitcoms and movies, especially all these old 80s sitcoms, there's this pattern. Somebody tells a lie, and somebody gets mad, there's a misunderstanding, and everybody's mad, and everything blows up. Now, in the movies that are in the sitcoms, they patch it all up 30 minutes later, and everybody's happy. But in real life, things don't get patched up that quickly. Once somebody lies to you, trust is broken. And that's not easily mended. It could take years and years to really rebuild trust. That's the power of our words. How many marriages have been broken up over lies or distrust? Or how many friendships have suffered because somebody was dishonest or gossiped about somebody? Or how many business deals fell apart? Our words have real power of destruction. Similarly with gossip. Sometimes when we think of gossip, I think of Rachel Lynn. Are you familiar with Rachel Lynn, Van of Green Gables? Anybody Anne of Green Gables fans? My wife is. Grandma is too. She's this lovable old lady that's in everybody's business, and she gossips like crazy, but everybody kind of likes her. But Proverbs says gossip's not like that. He has this picture in Proverbs of an enemy, this big giant dude with a club and a spear ready to kill somebody. I mean, this is serious stuff. And passage after passage in Proverbs talks about the destructive power of our words, of lying, of gossip, and flattery, of being like that. And all these examples just show how much our words have the power to tear down, to destroy, and make a mess. But in contrast, he also shows how our words have the power to build up. Solomon talks about the righteous and the wise using their words to encourage, to guide people, to help people believe. Proverbs 10:31 says, "From the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom." And Proverbs is filled with this idea of wise people, of righteous people, teaching and instructing with their words, passing along wisdom to their families or people younger than them or people that need wisdom. Through our words, we can teach, we can exhort, we can encourage when people are broken, we can build up. In some ways, the whole book of Proverbs is kind of an object lesson in that. Solomon is doing what he's talking about. He is using his words to impart wisdom, to teach. And so many of us all have personal stories in our own lives. Somebody that was a mentor to us or an encourager when we were down. Times that we can remember where this person's words really built me up in the time that I needed it. So just as our words have this power to tear down and destroy, also our words have this power to really help and encourage. Another way that he talks about the good power of our words in Proverbs is defending what's right. Proverbs 31:8-9 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of those who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." I'm not sure there's very many times in Scripture where we're commanded to speak up, talk more. But here God's not asking us to speak up for ourselves. He's not asking us to defend our own rights, to stand up for what I think is important for me. On the contrary, he's told, use the power of your words for those that can't speak for themselves, for the poor or the hurting. There's kind of a whole other sermon kind of wrapped up in that. God's heart for the poor and our job to defend them. But in this case, it's just one more example of Solomon saying, and God saying, your words have power, use them for the kingdom. Well, that's my first overarching point, really. The power of our words. We need to be reminded that our words are not just flippant things, but they are powerful and change the world. But the second point is the power of our words in our own lives. That our words steer our own hearts. That my weird words steer who I am. It's not just others that are impacted by what I say. I'm impacted myself. Going back to the subject of gossip, there's a proverb that when I was reading through Proverbs, I noticed the same proverb was in the book twice, in two different places. I thought, that's got to be important, right, if it just shows up in two completely different places? It was this. Proverbs 18:8 and 26:22 say, the words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. I really love this picture. The gossip is like food. And you put it in, you chew it up, it sits in your body, and it becomes who you are. I've been told by my doctor that I have high cholesterol. Part of that is genetic, thanks, Dad. But part of it is it's the food I eat. I eat this unhealthy, fatty food, and I put it in, my body digests it, and some of it gets used for energy and good things, some gets passed on out, and part of it, this cholesterol just sits there, clogging up my arteries, making me less healthy. Who I am, it just stays in there as who I am. And Proverbs said, our words are like that. You put them in, and they go down to the inmost parts. They become who you are. If we look also in the familiar passage in James 3, James talks a lot about our tongues. And he says this. It's kind of a long passage. When we put bits in the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they're so large and driven by strong winds, they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a whirl of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Well, James isn't messing around here. This is powerful stuff. He's using these strong language to tell us our words steer who we are. The words we say influence what we think. They influence what we do and change who we are. Jesus himself says a similar thing in Matthew. He says that what comes out of our mouth defiles us. I was reading an article online a little while back. Now, this is not a spiritual thing. This is kind of a scientific thing, but I thought it was interesting and relates to this. It's about how people's brains are changed by their own lives. And I'm not an expert on on this, so if anybody's an expert, you can correct me on the details. But I guess this is part of the brain called the amygdala that's responsible for some of the emotional processing and things like that in your brain. Researchers studying, they found that when you lie, it just goes crazy because you have this internal conflict. And so it's going crazy trying to justify, you said this thing and you know it's not true and what's going on. But in studying people, they found with repeated lies, if you keep lying over and over again, that part of your brain stops firing off, it stops going crazy. You become conditioned to your own lies. Well, like I said, that's just kind of a physical, scientific thing, but I think it's just another example of our words change who we are. Now, most of us aren't chronic liars either, but our words still can steer us in ways that aren't healthy. You know, a lot of times in the evening after we put the kids to bed, my wife and I will take a walk in the evening, and I'll start to decompress and talk about my day. Either annoying things that happen at work or somebody that bothered me, and it's really easy for me to get complaining. And my wife's really good about gently reminding me how the more I complain about it, if I'm just complaining, it doesn't make me feel better. What does it makes me bitter. It makes me bitter towards that person at work. It makes me bitter towards that person that may have annoyed me in some way. So instead of being kind of a helpful thing, my words are making me into an angrier person. And I want to encourage you to take her reminder. She reminds me, stop and slow down. Is that helpful? And I think that's the reminder we want to ask today. Do I want to be like what my words are saying? Do I want to be the person that says and believes these things? Proverbs 13:3 says, whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. The idea of guard your mouth. So we see that not only do our words have power in the world around us, but they really can change who we are. Well, those are my first 2 points, and about the power of our words in the world around us and the impact to ourselves. Before I get to the third point, I want to talk a little bit about an application for those first 2 points. It's one thing to stand up here and say, you know, our words are powerful, so let's try to do better. But how do we really take action on that? Or in day-to-day life, how do I hold my tongue so I avoid saying hurtful things to my family or to my coworkers or people around me? Well, Solomon also addresses that in Proverbs. He gives us an answer to that. Because another theme that appears all throughout Proverbs is this: be slow to speak. Proverbs 10 says this. Chapter 10, I'm going to read a few different verses from chapter 10. The wise in heart accept commands, but a chattering fool comes to ruin. Whoever winks maliciously